this didn't really seem like a knee jerk, or is the feeling relief inside of the locker room right now? There's no panic or anything with this move right here.
When you look at it, the hard times are over with the play calling. And with John Morton, play calling is a sweet science, just like professional wrestling. You can't just be a mat technician. You got to sell to the audience. You got to be able to talk on the microphone. You got to be able to sell merchandise. You can't just be a one-trick pony. John Morton definitely understands defenses. He understands tendencies. But play calling is not just a list of plays. It's when to use them, who to deploy them, and when. Like, you can't say to Jameson Williams, I'm sorry, baby, I'm not getting you the football, and then you never get him the football. Like, you got to deliver. You got to, like, if you apologize to the man in public, then the next time you get him into a game, you don't get him garbage time targets. Dan Campbell, it was like, you get a target, you get a target, you get a rush, you get a rush. It was balanced. It was sequenced perfectly. And the way in which I describe it is Dan Campbell understands the fine tuning of the ingredients. He knows exactly the right amount of salt to put in the chili, the exact right amount of heat. And John Morton just didn't. And against the Commanders' 28th ranked defense, you went out there and you curb stomped the team. And I think it's good too, because Dan Campbell can get the rust out from the lack of time that he spent play calling. He hasn't done it in several years. But in my opinion, Russell, I think that, and I asked Dan Campbell this week, I'm hearing that the microphones are jacked up now. You can always hear my questions nice and clear, the good ones, hopefully. And I asked Dan Campbell, I said, look, and by the time it got to me and I was the 9th play calling question, he's all like, oh my God, is this ever going to end? John's asking questions. Oh my God, here we go. But it was straightforward. And by that point, Dan was tired of answering questions, but I still had to ask it. That's what you got to do. And my question was, quite frankly, you look across the league and all the best offenses, the head coach is calling the plays. I said, that's a trend, Dan. What's going on? Why is that happening? And he's like, I know of it, but I'm not sure. He's like, and I got him to say, which I think is the best question you can ask somebody, is ask them a question they have no clue about. I mean, he's like, I don't even know. I don't know why it's happening, but he's like, I'm doing it. I'm prepared to do it. And my declaration for Dan Campbell is, Dan, keep doing it for the rest of your career. Nobody is going to know your offense better than you. Nobody, Russell, no one's going to know the ins and outs of your show and your audience better than you. So I'm not going to say, on my podcast, hey, somebody else produce it. No, it's me. I come up with the ideas. I come up with the time. I come up with the way in which I want to do things. So for Dan Campbell, the problem's going to be, in my theory, is that I think 3-4 head coaches from the league are going to get fired this year that I think could come in and do the job that Dan Campbell wants. It could be McDaniels, could be Brian Daboll. I think Zach Taylor might be out with the Bengals. You have a lot of opportunities to go pick somebody better, but I also could see John Morton staying because he is somebody that the Lions trust, and I think he does a good job of studying to the degree that he's going to give Dan Campbell a bunch of information. Maybe you move him up and call it a promotion to like senior offensive wizard. I don't know, but I think John Morton has a role with this Detroit Lions organization. But the thing that you saw was Dan Campbell sequencing the plays in a way where there was basically no third downs. It was first down, second down, get a first down. There was flow, there was rhythm. And I think that the players enjoyed thoroughly Dan Campbell calling plays because they felt like, okay, Dan will get us the ball. Dan will call plays that put us in a position to get the ball. John Morton, and he kind of said it yesterday, he is more of a take what your defense kind of guy and is way too passive. Dan has the right amount of aggression where he's like, yeah, there's a chance that this might not go right, but I think he'll take the chance and you'll start to see more explosiveness in this offense.
Yeah, what I notice about, and I really defended John Morton when it came with this, if you look back at his scripted plays, you talk about the first 15 plays of a game, he's fine. Like, I mean, he's a genius when it comes out to knowing an offense and, the X's and O's, but you can definitely tell once it got past that 15 plays that he was a little bit like of a fish out of water. And, he didn't have the ebb and flow of the game down. And it's one thing that I noticed because I was at the game, which was awesome, by the way. We were sitting in section 342 on the corner where that Air Force One flew over the stadium, and it was so low coming over the stadium that I felt like I could almost touch the bottom of the airplane. It was so close. And for a split second, John, I was wondering if that plane was going to crash into the other side of the stadium. And then it was like there was this uncomfortable silence for a second, and then everybody cheered once it got over and they realized that we were going to be alive there. But it was that was an intense moment, and I can't undersell that, by the way. But it was awesome that once the game got going, you could really tell that Dan Campbell just, he's really got his hands on the pulse. Because when you look at the player stats here, just like you had said, you got Jamison, 5 catches, Amon-Ra, 5 catches, Sam Laporta, 5 catches, Khalif Raymond, 4 catches, Jameer, 3 catches, Isaac Tesla had a catch. So he was spreading the balls around, and I believe that this offense is unstoppable when you put defenses into a trick bag. And that's what essentially you're doing, because if you're trying to block Jameson Williams from going deep, you got to pull safety out of the box, opens it up for Jahmyr Gibbs, and you just keep doing this back and forth thing, and they can't stop it. So I really, really enjoyed the flow of the game, and I really hope that he stays with the play calling forever, just like McVay does. There's a lot of NFL coaches that do that, and I just want to see him do that because he's a genius, man. You can really feel that he is a genius,